All right. Welcome back, guys, to a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast, where we explore real estate, self improvement, and just how to get better every single day. As always, my name is Adam, and I'm here with my co host, Ben. And today's episode is really, really exciting because it's something that is very recent, something that's just came out in the news in the past couple of weeks. And Ben's going to be really diving into this and sharing with you guys, hopefully, some stuff that you haven't heard about yet. And be the first ones to share it with you. So, what we're talking about here is just the most important housing updates we've ever covered. As of March 2025, HUD officially announced that non permanent residents are no longer eligible for FHA insured mortgages. This change doesn't just affect immigrants, it in fact impacts the entire housing market, the rental market, and just the American dream in itself. So, if you guys care at all about fair access to home ownership, market stability, or you just really want to understand how government policy can maybe affect your wallet, this episode is a must listen. I know that was a lot to hear just then, so I'm excited for Ben just to dumb that down a little bit for people like myself, just to understand exactly what it is we're going to be talking about today. Ben, welcome back, bud.
So excited to be here, and this is so important. I'm glad that we're covering this today on today's episode because this is a major announcement, breaking news in the mortgage world, in the real estate world, and we are your number one source for mortgage updates when it comes to things just like this.
Yep, absolutely. So let's just kind of dive into this. What's changed? Why does it matter? Maybe even, to start off just by explaining a couple of these acronyms that I just used. What is HUD? What is FHA? Just give us like a quick kind of explanation of what it is we're even talking about.
But before I get into that, in case you're wondering what I'm talking about, now, if you go online and do a search, and this is how the headlines are going to read: illegal immigrants can no longer buy, illegal immigrants no longer eligible for an FHA mortgage. When you put that in, all of this stuff is going to come up. And that's how a lot of these articles were written. And what's so frustrating for me about that is that illegal immigrants, people that are here illegally, they've never been able to buy before and after. If you're not here legally, if you don't have a green card, if you're not a permanent resident, if you don't have a work authorization, or if you're not here in asylum, if you're literally here illegally, you've never been able to buy and you still can't. But the headlines, though, are very misleading. So let's talk about what the policy used to be. So, what the FHA policy used to be prior to this update is that non permanent residents could qualify for FHA loans if they had lawful residency, a valid work authorization or employment authorization card, a social security number, and if they qualified from a financial ownership perspective, if they had the credentials financially as far as credit score, income, debt to income, if they had access to a down payment or down payment assistance. The qualifying guidelines weren't bent at all. So they needed to qualify just like every other American. And the way that most of these immigrants would do that, again, legal immigrants, not illegal immigrants, the way that most of these legal immigrants would do this would be through an FHA mortgage. So that's how it used to be. As long as
Okay.
you had a work authorization, as long as you had a social security number, as long as you could qualify, you were eligible. Now, here is the big update, and this happened effective March 26th. That's when the announcement came out. It goes into effect on May 25th. So May 25th and after is when this goes into effect. So if you are DACA, or any folks that are DACA are no longer eligible. If you are someone that is here in the United States on asylum, before you are eligible as of May 25th, you are not. Even if you're here legally and you have an employment authorization card, or if you have an H-1B or an L-1 visa, before you were eligible as of May 25th, you are not. Someone with an employment authorization card, even if it's good for several years, you are no longer eligible for an FHA mortgage. Now, the reason that this announcement came out is that HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development part of the federal government, has claimed that the risk is just too high for deportation, that someone could get deported, and if they got deported, they would no longer be able to make payments on the mortgage. But critics argue that, and myself included, that the people that we're punishing are not the problem. And that's what I have said. The folks that we're punishing are the people that want to be here, that are here legally, that have taken the necessary steps to build credit, get their social security number, they have a visa or they have an employment authorization. And these are people that want to invest in America and they're hoping that America invests back in them. A lot of times these are people that are active participants in their local communities and local economies. They're contributing to their neighborhoods. And these are the people, these are the immigrants that we want to build around. Now, though, with this new policy, these folks are no longer going to be eligible for an FHA mortgage.
That's crazy, man. Yeah, I think I'll let you kind of elaborate on this a little bit, but I was pretty amazed just reading through some of the stats on this about how like over 90% of these non-permanent resident mortgages were FHA backed. So this, this FHA part of this that we're talking about is making up a significant, if majority of all of these loans. It's not just like a small little snippet. It sounds like this is really going to affect, the vast majority.
Yeah, and the reason for that is the benefit of FHA is that it's a little more flexible, it's a little easier to qualify for because it is a government-backed loan. So it does allow for higher debt to income ratios. It allows for lower credit scores. It also allows for lower down payments. And a lot of folks that have immigrated here, they need access to that. So as of right now, non-permanent residents who are here legally, they still have access to conventional loans, but keep in mind, conventional loans are much more difficult to qualify for. The debt to income requirements are much lower. The credit score requirements are much higher, and you have to put a higher down payment. And so that's why over 90% of non permanent residents focused on the FHA mortgage. And again, they're no longer going to be eligible for this, which is it's just very, it's very disappointing because again, these are the folks that need it. We're punishing the wrong demographic. And from a lending perspective and a real estate perspective, I want to be able to help people that have come here from other countries. There are so many, and this is more of a personal thing for me, but one of my concerns about America right now is that there are so many people, and a lot of these people are like second and third generation Americans who have been here, but they're just very entitled and
Hmm.
they act like America is this terrible place. And, they don't want to either work or they're very entitled. They have all these negative things to say about America. They act as if the American dream is dead. And they're very vocal about this.
Hmm.
And what I always say when someone says or states that the American dream is dead, I say, go talk to an immigrant. Because when you
Yeah.
talk to an immigrant, someone that has actually lived in another country, and a lot of time, just a very, very difficult country to get your basic necessities and needs met, and they come here to America, they believe that anything is possible and they still believe in the American dream. So whenever someone says the American dream is dead, I say go talk to an immigrant because they will tell you that the American dream is still alive.
Love that. So let's now kind of transition a little bit just to this ripple effect of how this is not just going to affect the people directly that are immigrants, but also just the overall housing market. I think you had a couple really good points when we were chatting about this earlier before starting tonight's podcast. Entry level homes, I know, are a big one. They're probably going to see a little bit of reduction in demand since that is typically the demographic that's buying some of these homes. Talk a little bit more about that as well as any of these other ripple effects.
Yeah, and that's another concern that I have is that, when some of these guidelines and some of this news has been breaking, at times there doesn't seem to be a lot of thought about what are some of the secondary consequences. Right now there's been incredible stock market volatility with all of these tariff announcements. And my concern on the housing market as far as ripple effects, well, you're exactly right. A lot of these non-permanent residents are focusing on entry level homes. And so if there is reduced demand in that segment, it could really slow price growth. And if people can't buy because they're no longer eligible or they can't qualify, well, that means they're going to have to stay renting. And rental demand could rise, could lead to increased rents and further housing affordability issues. And then it's also just going to create some market instability, in my opinion, not just for sellers, but sellers, agents, and lenders. It's very difficult when guidelines are just constantly changing. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but the folks from Venezuela they've been granted temporary protected status for asylum. Well, that was terminated back in February, on February 5th, but then on March 31st, it was that termination was then revoked. So they went from being eligible for asylum to not being eligible for asylum to now being back once again eligible for asylum, at least for right now. And so from a lending perspective, it makes it very, very difficult when you have these big guidelines that are just constantly changing, and it just creates instability in the marketplace. And then another big concern that no one is talking about is just a widening wealth gap between citizens and immigrants. And that's a concern, short
Hmm.
term, medium term, and long term.
Yeah, I just think about like the whole illegal versus legal immigrant. A legal immigrant, they're going to be able to have a W-2 and have some form at least of proof of income, which is a requirement for anybody that's buying a home with a loan, which I'm assuming is going to be the majority, if not almost all of these. It's like, what's even the point of having this? An illegal immigrant, they're not going to be paying cash for a home probably, and very unlikely. So it's like, what is this really even doing? I don't know. Just
Yeah, yeah,
it.
I mean, you're exactly right. Legal immigrants is which is what we're talking about. They're filing taxes. They're paying taxes on the income that they earn. They have a valid social security number.
Mhm.
They're and that's what is so frustrating is the headlines are so deceptive.
Yeah.
And the folks that are here legally are the ones that are being punished. The illegal immigrants, well, they don't have a social. They can't actually work here. They can't file a tax return because they're not here legally.
Yep. It's crazy.
Now, I think you know what? And that's right. I see our producer in the back there, Charlie, wants us to jump in and talk about this week's sponsor. So this week's sponsored segment, Adam Sells Denver. This episode is sponsored by Adam Sells Denver because in 2025, navigating the real estate market isn't just about buying or selling, it's about winning. Here's why you want Adam in your corner. Over 50 five-star Google reviews. Not only that, but also free tools and resources at adamsellsdenver.com. And also access to our brand new free live masterclasses, where Adam and I will walk you through the strategies buyers and sellers need to succeed in this wild 2025 market. These aren't just boring webinars. This is real talk and proven tactics you can use today. To find out when the next session drops, follow Adam Sells Denver on social or visit webinar.adamsellsdenver.com. Now let's get back to the episode. You mentioned wild 2025 market, and that is the it's been wild. I mean, just the interest rates over this past week, we are in the sevens. Some of this news has broke. It comes all the way down into the low sixes, dips into the high fives, and now we're back up into the high sixes and sevens. We're talking about over a 2 week period. It's crazy.
Yeah. Hopefully it goes back the other direction. We'll see what happens. Only time will tell. I'd love to just talk now a little bit about just why this policy feels wrong. I know we were just talking a little bit about that already with some of these misleading headlines, but let's talk a little bit more just about, just the American dream, so to speak, when it comes to just immigrants and this hope and opportunity that they have. Home ownership, obviously, it's not just about a place to live, it's stability, generational wealth, hopefully, is built by owning the home, a belief just in a better future and just future generations. Anybody that has a family and kids being able to provide a better life for them. The move, I think, that's happening now is just really sending this message that you can work here, you can pay your taxes here, but you're never really going to truly belong here with this restriction. So, what's your kind of take on that? I know you've shared a little bit already on that, but
Well, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that 100%. And listen, at the end of the day, the number one wealth building tool in America is homeownership. And if we're taking that away from anyone, they're just going to suffer the consequences. They're not, that wealth gap is so important. When you own your own home, it stabilizes your housing. Your home is going to appreciate in value. It's going to create additional opportunities for you and your family. When you look at the average net worth of someone that owns a home versus rents, yeah, I mean, you've shared some of these graphics before, but it's someone that owns a home, the average net worth is like 1,000% higher than someone that rents. In 2025, I think the average net worth for someone that owns a home is over 500,000, and someone that rents is like 10,000. I
mm-hmm.
mean, it's that substantial. And so that's why I'm critical is that we are taking away this opportunity and this privilege from folks that want to be here. They're doing the right things. And keep in mind that if someone is not a law abiding citizen, if they're causing problems, if they're getting arrested, if they're not not a good resident, I said citizen there, but if they're not a good resident, they're not going to get their work authorization renewed.
Hmm. Yep.
Like, if you have a work authorization and you're a non-permanent resident and you're getting arrested or you're causing problems, that authorization is not going to get renewed, and you're not going to be able to take, you're not going to be able to work here in the United States. And so these are folks that are law abiding. They want to be here. Again, they've done all these things. They've got the social security number. A lot of them are working at regular jobs. They could be working at King Supers, Walmart. They're able to have a job like that, but they can't own a home. I mean, does that seem wrong to you?
Yeah, on my end, I just think it's so important for Denver, or for America, just to be focusing more on our country again, as far as whether or not you guys, whatever side you lean politically, just though understanding like make America great again, that whole idea, I think can be really applied no matter what side of the fence you're on. But understanding that the economic damage this is going to have on just the less demand, the less stability, the less growth, where now more than ever, it's really an important time in our society just to be focusing on growing America and making it as strong as we possibly can be. And immigrants are a huge part of that, contributing to our local economy, property taxes, community stability. Just excluding them from all this is really short sighted. And I think it's going to impact everybody, even though it's kind of geared to just affect a very small portion of people. Um, I don't know.
I mean,
Just
at the end of the day, aren't we? I mean, this has always been a perspective that I've had, but aren't we all immigrants? I mean, my family on my dad's side, they immigrated here in the early 1900s. My mom's side, I'm not exactly sure, but my kids, for example, that side of the family, their mom and their ancestors, I mean, they came here more recently in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s.
mhm.
And so all of us came here at some point, and that's another concern that I have, is that it just creates this double standard. I get, some of the immigration concerns that we have as far as the border, and I do think that there needs to be security measures in place to know who's coming into the country. I support that. But at the same time, the way we're going about this and how we're going about it, in my opinion, is we're punishing the wrong people here, and that's why I'm so passionate about this. And again, my kids and that side of the family. I mean, there's a little bit of a personal element there, and my ex father in law, my ex wife's dad, his name is Jesus. Just very kind, so hardworking, extremely generous. I mean, he has done so much for his family, his community. He has donated to charity. I mean, he is just the nicest, hardworking, just unbelievably generous. As, makes his role in life is he goes out and works every day, and now he's in his 70s, so he can give his money to others in need. Like, that's his mission. He gives his money to a lot of it's here to other people here in the US. Sometimes
That's
he'll send
awesome.
it back to Central America, but he's having that type of impact on his community. To think that someone who has made it his mission in life would and he's a citizen now, but for folks like that, it's just it's disheartening.
So let's fast forward a few years, 2028, when you're running for president of the United States of America. What can
Yeah.
be done instead? What are some alternative options here?
Well,
Obviously, I
let's
think
talk
with
about some of the
loans.
options that we have right now. I mean, the biggest option would be a future legislation change. For right now, though, there are other options. So if you're someone that is a non-permanent resident and you have a work authorization or you're here on asylum, you still may have some options. And one of those options is through a conventional loan, through a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan. Now, we touched on this earlier. It is going to be harder to qualify for. The debt to income requirements are more strict. Your credit score is going to have to be higher. The down payment requirements are also increased. On an FHA loan, you could put as little as 3.5% down. A conventional, the minimum down is 5%. And it's much more difficult to qualify for that. That's also, though, I'm a big believer and preacher on financial literacy. And so it's not impossible, but you have to take your financial literacy very, very seriously. And so now more than ever, you need to get in touch with your finances, your wallet, your budget, and put a financial plan together, regardless of your residency status. You'll also want to check with credit unions. In some cases, credit unions can be a little bit more flexible as far as some of the programs out there. And so it is frustrating on one end, but at least as of right now, there are some other options out there and available.
Okay. So now, again, though, let's talk about a few years from now when you do take office. What
Yeah.
are some long-term solutions here?
I mean, the biggest long-term solution when I become president is that I'm gonna reverse this. This is gonna be a thing. I'm gonna reverse this change because it's legislation, and so all of this can be reversed or changed. And so this is something that I would change,
Hmm.
personally. And so as soon as I find my running mate, I'm gonna camp. This is gonna be one of my campaigning themes.
I don't know if I'm the best running mate. I might have a few skeletons in my closet that might come up, but we'll
Well, we all do, but like how big and nasty are those
not
skeletons?
that bad. Not that bad. I don't want to scare any of our viewers or listeners today. So let's kind of wrap
It's
this one up.
like, can you imagine the posters though if you were my running mate? Because just like the Benjamin Adams, Adam Lang, like I think if you got a really creative graphic
Adam and
designer,
Adams.
like you could make
Yeah.
a really cool poster.
Yeah.
Or
And
it's like
maybe,
maybe like half of my face, it's like half of my face and half of your face. Like, but I don't know.
and I mean, to be honest too with you, I mean, there already has been a President Adams. So,
Two.
two.
Yeah, John Quincy and then John Quincy's son.
Oh, okay. Okay. You guys can
Yeah.
tell who studied in high school. Okay. So let's just wrap this one up, guys. Talk a little bit about just getting financially educated. Just, Ben, maybe a couple highlights of just like what is important for anybody that maybe is listening or viewing this. Maybe they are just concerned. Maybe this is hitting them personally, or maybe they have somebody that's close to them that this is going to affect personally. What are some like fundamentals that can at least put them in a better position just to hopefully still succeed?
Yeah, if you're someone that wants to purchase and if that's important to you, you can't give up on the dream no matter what. You have to believe in yourself, you have to believe in your dream, and you have to have a very compelling vision for yourself, regardless of what's happening. Only focus on the things that you can control. You can't focus what policy guidelines or changes are going to happen. And again, like we kind of said that jokingly, it's certainly possible that another 4 years like this could get reversed. So it's certainly
Hmm.
possible. But this really is more, in my opinion, this is more than just a lending guideline change. This is about what kind of country do we want to be? What kind of nation are we? Or we used to be a nation that rewards hard work, responsibility, and contribution. Are we still that country? Or are we a country that moves the goalposts once someone plays by the rules? You've done all the necessary steps. We're changing our guidelines so you're no longer eligible. So, in my opinion, this really isn't just about FHA loans. It's about fairness. It's about access. It's about equality. And it's about the American dream. And when people make it hard for honest, hardworking people to own a home, we all lose.
Yeah. Well, you guys, if this episode hit you like it definitely hit me, share it with somebody else. Definitely share the show if you guys got any value from this one today. Follow us on social. And just more than anything, also, if you guys want just to dive a little bit deeper into actionable tips, advice on home ownership, make sure you guys join our next free live webinar. It's a masterclass. It's not something that you're used to doing. Maybe that boring webinar you joined 6 months ago from an ad you clicked on Facebook. This is totally different. We go a lot more in depth, and it's a lot more personal, where we do share stories, things that are actually happening right now, and hopefully just give you guys some value too, just to help succeed and make it a more reality for you as well to be a homeowner in the near future. So again, join us for the next one. Find when that's going to be on webinar.adamsoulsdenver.com, or just follow Ben or myself on social. Make sure you guys are also checking out Ben's YouTube channel. It's American Money 101. He goes a lot more in depth on this specific topic. I don't know if it's come out yet, Ben. When is this episode on your American Money 101 coming out?
The episode drops, I believe it is the last Friday of April.
Cool. Well, definitely stay tuned for that. I'll link that as well in the show notes, because he'll go even more in depth and share more specifics on that. But until next time, stay informed, stay hopeful, and let's keep moving forward together. My name is Adam, and speaking for Ben, have a great rest of your night. We'll see you guys next week on a brand new episode of
A Pursuit of Progress podcast. We love you guys.